Assalamu alaikum. Sorry about the late start today. Okay, so today we have mashallah, Arhan, Aryan, Aruf, Ghafur, sorry, Aruf and Huzaifa. Okay, just gonna share my screen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Who's that?
Me, Arhan.
Arhan, okay. Walaikum salam. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Last week, let's just do a little quick review. Last week we talked about a few things. Talked about like a little bit about social media, and we talked about like relationships and stuff like that, and why certain things are haram, even like food, right? So let's see. Let's have Arhan. Arhan, could you review, like, basically we said Allah makes certain things haram. Do you remember why we said that? Why did Allah make, for example, like certain foods haram?
Because he wants us to be nice and clean.
Yeah. So, for example, like, why would He have made pork haram?
Because pork is from pigs and they're dirty.
Yeah. And like, if we ate something like that, how would that affect us?
Make us sick.
Yeah, very good. What about like things like alcohol or drinking things like that?
Like alcohol, like a whole lesson about that in school. It's like a certain amount will make your like brain feel good, but if you take way too much, it can kill you or make impairments.
Yeah, very good. So we talked about that, right? That Allah wanted to like close the door for any of that kind of harmful stuff. Like, don't even go near it, because we see like all the harms in our society. Like drunk driving, physical illness, mental illness, all of that stuff that's created by these things. So again, when we think about, okay, why is this haram? We should try to think of reasons why it's haram. And like certain things about like relationships between uh men and women, boys and girls, things like that. Okay, I think that's good for the review. So today I'd like to talk about the Sahaba. Oh wow, that turned out very blurry. it's kind of like an image of a battlefield. Does anyone know how many battles there occurred in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? There are actually many more.
Yeah, there's some battles that he didn't go to.
Yeah, that was a good point. He
Like
didn't.
around it's like around like 50 to like 100, I believe, so, or 1,000. I don't know.
So the ones that the Prophet ﷺ, during his lifetime, it said that there was about 17 or 19, and not all of them were actually battles, right? They kind of went out on, it's called an expedition. They go out on a journey to meet a certain other group of people, and either they agree to not fight or they end up, they end up having a battle. But sometimes they didn't have to fight them. And from the Sira class, what were the different types of people, meaning like in terms of religion, that the Muslims dealt with? Do you guys remember?
Like there were Christians.
Yeah, Christians. There were some Christians, yeah. Quraysh, yeah, Quraysh were idol worshippers. They believed in like idols, and they believed that there were
Jews.
multiple gods. Very good. Jews. Um, yeah, Aus and Khazraj, they were there were two groups of people in living in Medina, and they accepted Islam. So they became the Ansar. So do you guys remember what's the difference between the Ansar and the Muhajirun?
The Ansar were people from Medina, but the Muhajirun were from Makkah.
Very good. Yeah, the Muhajirun were the Muslims who believed early on, and they migrated with the Prophet ﷺ from Mecca to Medina. Very good. And then the Ansar, there were the Aus and Khazraj tribes. There were two tribes from among the Ansar. Very good. Umayyads are actually, we talked about this like way before the Sirah class, maybe like 2 years ago. I think Aryan was there. I'm not sure if anyone else was there. That was like when there was a kind of a dispute between Ali and Muawiyah. Remember we talked about that, the two companions? Yeah. So that was about that. So very good. Just some brief review. So I want to talk about the companions. I know like uh some of you were there for some of the companions. So I'm gonna try to do this thing where let's list all of the companions we can think of and mention a few points about them. So can you guys see my notepad? Maybe not.
Yes.
You can see this
I see
notepad.
your cursor.
Oh, okay. Maybe I have to share my screen a little differently. I'll just share the whole screen. Now you can see the cursor.
Oh, I see the notepad.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I see a chat from Aryan. So very good. Let's add this to the list. Okay, so we have, I just added Abu Bakr on to start. We have Bilal radiallahu anh, Ali, Khadija, Umar, Uthman, Abu Bakr. Very good. Let's see. Arhan, do you know any other companions or Sahaba that you can think of who we're gonna write down here and talk about?
No, but I'll think of some.
I know one.
Sure, Huzaifa, why don't you list a few?
I think so. I decided. It's
Sorry?
kind of similar. My name is my name is almost similar to a
Very good. Yeah,
companion.
your name is. Yeah, very good. Huzaifa, yeah. Okay.
Wait, this was spelled differently.
Yeah, actually they spell it like that.
Yeah.
Very good. Um, who else? Let's see. We have Arush in the class. Arush, do you know of any other companions?
No.
Or maybe you could answer like Aryan's question. He said, do the wives and daughters count as Sahaba? Yes, they do. They do. So there's many female Sahaba also, which are from the
Well, like
family.
all three Prophet Muhammad's like daughters, like
Yeah,
Fatima,
yeah,
Zainab.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fatima Zainab, very good. Aryan said Ruqayya, and there's one more daughter.
Aisha.
Yeah, so Aisha now is the wife. Kulthum. Very good. Okay, so we got the four daughters, we got a few wives. All right, so let's write them down. And then I'll just write the four daughters. All right, so let's start with this for now. Yeah, there were a few more wives. Okay, so very good. Let's start with Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, does anyone know what was the age difference between him and the Prophet? They're very close in their age. Only 2 years apart. Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, very good, Arya. He was 2 years younger than the Prophet. So we're gonna start with Abu Bakr. So he was like, he was a person who was very wealthy, right? Before like the Prophet was a prophet. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh was close to him, and he was very wealthy. And he, as soon as the Prophet, started spreading the message, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh accepted, and he supported him fully. So he is like the top companion. He did as much as he could for the Prophet. There's one statement that the Prophet said that I've paid back everyone, all of the companions in this world. Whoever has done any favors to me, I've paid them back in this world, except for Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. He's gonna get his, you could say like his payback or his reward. Like the Prophet is gonna reward him, not him, but he'll get his reward in the akhirah. Obviously, everyone else will get their reward in the akhirah too. But for whatever his favors he did, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh did so many favors for the Prophet that he was not able to pay him back in the world. That'll happen in the day of judgment and hereafter. You guys remember the story of the cave, right?
Like four guys and a dog went to a cave and then they hid
Oh
there.
no,
Sleep for like
not
a
that,
long time.
not that one. There was that's
Well, if the
that.
spider web like covers the cave and the Quraysh don't get them.
Yeah, very good. So there's one story of the cave which is mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf. It's kind of interesting. And cave, they sound kind of similar, right? So it's possible they come from like a similar language. But anyway, that's just something cool I thought to mention. Um, the the name for cave is kaf. Like the Arabic word for kaf is the Arabic word for cave is kaf. So maybe it came from the Arabic. It's really possible. So as you guys mentioned, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. So radiallahu anh means what? Like when we say after a companion's name, radiallahu anh. Also comes in the Quran, right? Radiallahu anhum wa radu an. So radiallahu anhu means may Allah be pleased with him. Or if it's a girl, you say, radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her. So we make that kind of dua out of respect for the companions. Because it says in the Quran too that Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah. So usually, after saying a companion's name, say Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him. It's special for the companions. Okay? So he did so much for the Prophet. He went with him. He at the time, about 12 or 13 years after the Prophet was a prophet. So now the Prophet is about 52, 53 years old. And Abu Bakr also about 51. He went with him. Sorry, one more. Sorry. Okay. Oh, Arhan. Okay, that's very good. That's a very good point. Abu Bakr was a wealthy trader, so he had like a really big like a merchant business. So he was really wealthy. But you know what he did for the Prophet when he was leaving? He took all that wealth, he took all his money, and he put it in a bag and he took it with him to take with the Prophet to spend on this journey, to spend on this migration, right? And they like snuck out of Mecca. Those of you who are here for the Sierra class, they had to sneak out of Mecca, go a different route, and try not to get caught. And that's when they were in the cave, etc. One interesting thing is that most of the companions, so like we think, okay, these companions, they obviously went to the masjid, they stayed away from haram, stayed away from eating haram, they read a lot of Quran, they learned about Islam, and they lived really like peaceful lives. But at the same time, or a lot of the companions, they went to battle. So they were like very, calm people who went to the masjid to pray and were very kind and nice to their families. And at the same time, when they had to defend all the other Muslims, they would go and battle. And like this picture we have behind us, they would get on their horse, get their bows and arrows, get their shields and armors and swords, and risk their lives and fight for the sake of Allah. So they were also warriors. All the companions were warriors. Even the Prophet, he was a warrior. So I think it's really interesting and really cool that we really should be like looking up to them, seeing like how much they sacrificed and how much they loved the Prophet, and make them our role models. Like for example, we have actually, I'm not sure if there were companions with the names of the other students in the class, but I know Huzaifa had a companion. There was a companion named Huzaifa. Huzaifa, do you know anything about the companion or the Sahabi whose name was
So
Huzaifa?
like it's about like his like burial, like where he was buried. So there's another Sahaba with him that was buried. And also there's a story with it, like his like grave was being filled with water. And the king put a trumpet in there to see the water. So they moved the grave somewhere else.
Oh, that's really interesting. I think I've heard that too. I'm not 100% sure. That's very interesting. Do you remember like anything about his role with the Muslims at the time of the Prophet? He was called he used to keep the secrets of the Prophet. So what that means is sometimes they were very, like, for example, the Prophet ﷺ told Hudayfa radiallahu anhu who the hypocrites were. So what do I mean by the hypocrites? Who are the hypocrites?
Like people who are not actually real, like real religion, like they're fake and they do fake stuff and tell you fake stuff.
Yeah. They right, the Arabic word is munafiq, right? So these hypocrites, they acted like Muslims, but really they wanted to support the Jews, support the Quraysh, etc. So they used to like scheme behind the Prophet's back. But so the Prophet told Hudayfa radiallahu anhu who they were, but he didn't tell other people. So he was called the person who knew the secrets of the Prophet. So the Prophet didn't tell everyone this information. He only told Hudayfa. Why do you think he didn't tell all the Muslims or point out, oh, this person's a hypocrite, this person's a hypocrite, and we should kick them out and fight them? Why do you think he did that? Why didn't he expose them on the spot?
So that they can catch them
Uh,
easily.
actually, no. It's because they said that they were Muslims. They said that they were Muslims and they acted like Muslims. So they had no like proof. Although the Prophet knew, he knew who they were, but since they acted like Muslims and they said they were Muslims and they said the kalima, they said La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, so they went to the masjid, etc. If the Prophet started fighting with them, then people would say, oh, he's killing his own companions. He's fighting with his own companions, and this would cause a lot of trouble, cause a lot of confusion. So he just left them. But eventually they did get exposed. And yeah, that's good. So we talked a little bit about Abu Bakr al-An. Yeah, was it Uthman who was very rich and gave a lot of dirhams and camels? Was Umar? Yeah, it was Uthman radiallahu anhu, Arya. So why don't we talk a little bit about Uthman? So Uthman radiallahu anhu was about, I'd say maybe like, I think he was only about like 5 years younger than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, about 6 years younger than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was very wealthy. He was, one of his titles was Uthman the Wealthy. So he was extremely wealthy. There was one time where they were sitting in a group, all the companions, they were sitting in a group, and the Prophet was trying to, like how we have fundraisers, where someone gets up and says, oh, brothers and sisters, we need money to support this cause or whatever. So kind of like that, Prophet told the companions that we need to raise money for the army, for like equipment and armor, etc. So Uthman got up and he said, I'm gonna, donate 100 camels, for example. I'm not too sure about the exact number. And then, the Prophet made dua for him. And then again he kept asking. Then Uthman stood up again, he said, I'm gonna donate. Then Uthman sat down. Then the Prophet asked, okay, anyone else? Then he stood up a third time and he said, oh, Messenger of Allah, I would like to donate. So he donated, like, if you take the equivalent of those camels worth right now, it could have been maybe like $1 million. He donated so much money. So then the Prophet just said that, now Uthman is basically guaranteed Jannah. Like he already got his ticket, he got his seat booked in Jannah. So he was very generous. He was very wealthy, but he was very generous. So that I think is a really good example of how wealthy people in our community should be. In our community, like if you're wealthy, there's nothing wrong with being wealthy. But we have examples of like Abu Bakr radiallahu anh and Uthman radiallahu anh who were very wealthy, but they donated so much money. There was actually one time when Umar radiallahu anh, let's talk about him a little bit. So Umar radiallahu anh was also very senior companion. I'll talk about him a little bit. I'm sure you guys have heard. But there was one time when him and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, so Umar radiallahu anh wanted to go to the Prophet and donate half of his wealth. So imagine, let's actually imagine what half of your wealth means. Imagine, like, for example, your family. What does your family own? They own, a home, maybe 2-3 cars, all your clothes, all your furniture, all your, luxuries, all your whatever, extra things, etc. So you own all of that. Now imagine you as a family, you all agree we're going to give half of everything we have away. Okay, so imagine you sell your house and you all live in a house which is half that size. So instead of 4-bedroom, you live in a 2-bedroom. Instead of like 2,000 square foot, 1,000 square foot. So imagine this, everything half. You have 4 cars, now it's 2 cars, or you have 2 cars, now it's 1 car. Half of your wealth. So this is what Umar radiallahu anhu's intention was. So he was going to the Prophet and he was saying that I'm donating half of everything I own for the sake of Allah. And then when he got there, he found out that Abu Bakr radiallahu anh already donated all of his wealth. Everything. He gave everything. So he was so wealthy, but he gave up everything. He said, I'm going to donate everything and I'm going to just leave my family with Allah and His Messenger. So that's how generous Abu Bakr radiallahu anh was. So we're talking about people who really, they didn't care about the dunya that much. They did everything they could to, work for their life in the akhirah, their life in the hereafter. Let's see, we had a few statements. Arhan, Uthman, seems like you probably got this from a website. I'm not sure which website. Yeah, he was a businessman and a successful trader. Yeah. To Dhunnurain. Yeah, Aryan. Very good. So that was one of the titles of. Do you remember why, Aryan? Why Uthman ad-Dawn? Yeah, 2 prophets' daughters. That's right, yeah. So it was Ruqayya and Umm Kulthum. So Uthman ad-Dawn was married to one daughter of the Prophet, and she passed away. And the Prophet, loved Uthman ad-Dawn so much that he got his other daughter married to him also. Yeah, very good. Let's talk about Umar radiallahu anh. So, anyone like to give like a brief summary of his story, how he accepted Islam? No, Aryan, that was Uthman radiallahu anh. Yeah. So anyone remember Umar radiallahu anh's story, how he accepted Islam? Do you guys know anything about him? Maybe about like how his physical appearance or his personality?
Like I think so. He's like a really strong guy.
Yeah. He was extremely tall. They said that he was so tall that if he sat on a horse, his feet would drag on the floor. So you can imagine probably maybe like 8 foot. That's taller than the tallest basketball player I can think of, right? And he was extremely strong and muscular. I think they said that his forearm was like as thick as a baby. And babies are small, but if you take a little baby and if you take a baby and you compare it to the size of your forearm, then that's pretty big. Or like his forearm was like the size of a thigh. So extremely strong, extremely muscular, extremely tall, and that's why many people were afraid of him. So he was not the third companion. Umar Adnan was the second Khalifa, meaning after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, then who became the leader? Abu Bakr. Then after that, who became the leader? Umar. So he was the second leader of the Muslims, but he was not the third Muslim. There were actually many Muslims who accepted Islam before him. But just a brief story, or brief, maybe it'll jog your guys' memory. Umar radiallahu anh, when the Prophet was spreading his message, Umar radiallahu anh, he saw that people are becoming split. Some people are accepting the message of this messenger, and families are splitting. Some people agree with him, some people don't. So he saw that and he became angry. So this was before he became Muslim. So he took his sword and he's walking on the street towards the kind of the safe house where the Prophet and the Muslims would meet. So Umar walking with his sword like out. He's just walking with his sword out, and one person meets him, and this person was a Muslim, but he was secretly Muslim. So he didn't tell Umar that he was a Muslim, but he was secretly a Muslim. So he saw him and he asked Umar, "Oh, Umar, where are you going?" So then Umar said, "I'm going to go kill the Prophet. I'm going to go kill Muhammad." That's what he said. So this person, was very scared about that, but he didn't want to show him that he's a Muslim or he's worried. He said, "Why are you going to go kill him? Why don't you deal with your own family? They accepted Islam." So do you remember which family member of Umar accepted Islam? Yeah, looks like it jogged Aryan's memory a bit.
His sister
His sister, yeah, very good.
and his his sister's husband.
Sister's husband, yeah, his brother-in-law. Very good, very good.
Brother-in-law.
Yeah. So then he was furious. He was thinking, my sister accepted Islam? So he went to his sister's house and he heard some sound. And now I'm sure you guys remember the story, but I'll just mention it for those who haven't heard it. He heard some Quran being recited, and he started knocking on the door. And who was inside the home? There was his sister, his brother-in-law, and one other Muslim who was teaching them the Quran. So, the one who was teaching them Quran, he went in another room and he hid. And Umar Adnan barged in, and his sister was there, and his sister's husband was there. And he was saying, "Oh, what was that?" And they were like, "Oh, nothing," But then he started getting rough and he started beating up his brother-in-law. And then his sister was trying to stop him. And then Umar hit his sister, and then she started bleeding a little bit. And then she got angry and she said, "You know what? Do whatever you want. If you're going to kill us, then go kill us." But then Umar he felt bad, that he hit his sister. So then he asked if he could read that part of the Quran that they were learning. So then she said that no, you have to go and do a ghusl. Right? You have to go and take a bath because you're not pure. You have to be in the state of tahara. Like how we have to do ghusl and wudu. So you have to do that. So then he went, he did ghusl, he came and he read Surah Taha, beginning verses of Surah Taha. And then he went to there was one companion's house where the Prophet ﷺ and all the companions, they would gather, and Prophet ﷺ would discuss, Islam with them in his house. So Umar radiallahu anh went to that house. He knocked on the door. The companions looked outside. They're like, "Who is that?" They saw it was Umar. So they got scared, like, "Oh, what is Umar coming here to do? Obviously he wants trouble." So one companion stood up, and it was Hamza. Hamza radiallahu anh. Who is Hamza?
Prophet Muhammad's like friend or like brother-in-law.
Yeah, it was his uncle, who was only 2 years older than him. So he was very close. He was almost like a brother to him, very close uncle. Um, so Hamza was a very brave companion. He was very tough. So he said, "Oh, let Umar in. If he wants any trouble, then we'll deal with him." So he was not scared. He was very, very brave, very strong, very skilled at fighting and archery, etc. So he was another great companion, right? So Umar came in, and then they like took him to the Prophet, and the Prophet grabbed him by his shirt and pulled him down. He said, "Oh Umar, what do you want? What are you doing here?" And then Umar radiallahu anh said, "I've come to accept Islam." And then the companion said such a loud takbir, like in the masjid we have takbir, such a loud takbir, Allahu Akbar, that it shook the whole home. People outside heard, and people all around the home heard. So then they all came rushing, and they said Umar has accepted Islam. So once Umar accepted Islam, people were not as afraid to be Muslim, because right now people were secretly Muslim. They didn't try to go and say, "Hey, I'm Muslim," and like try to pray all together in Jamaat in the masjid, or by the Kaaba, right? But now Umar accepted Islam. He went to the Kaaba and he said, "I've accepted Islam. So whoever wants to, make his children orphans," right? He's saying, "Whoever wants to make his children orphans and his wife a widow, then then you can come and deal with us." He's basically saying, we're Muslim and deal with it. So Umar radiallahu anh, his personality was that he always spoke the truth. He, when something was wrong, he defended the truth. He defended what was right. And after Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, after the Prophet passed away, then Abu Bakr radiallahu anh passed away, then Hamza radiallahu anh, then Umar radiallahu anh became the leader. He was a very fair leader. He was a very fair leader. He he didn't used to live like a king. Like a king used to live like a royal in like a huge palace, and they used to have beautiful clothes. They used to have so much gold and really fancy food and luxury. But Umar radiallahu anh, he had normal clothes. And sometimes even if something ripped in his clothes, he would just patch it up instead of wearing a completely new clothing. So very simple person. So again, another role model. If you want to see, how Muslim men were supposed to be, they were supposed to be people who spoke the truth and they didn't lie. They were very brave. They weren't afraid to tell people they were Muslim. I think that's one important thing that we should take from the Sahaba. They were not afraid to tell people, "I'm Muslim." Nowadays it's not as bad, but still it's kind of there. But I remember when I was a kid, a lot of us used to feel shy of wearing like kurta and thobe and topi outside to the store or in public because we didn't really we felt kind of shy or embarrassed. But nowadays, as you guys know, everyone is everyone is proud of who they are. People have blue hair and they say I'm a girl when they're a boy, or they say that they are a boy and they like boys or girl, whatever. They say all these weird things and they tell everyone and they're proud of it. So
Like pride,
if they
like
pride,
pride.
exactly, like the Pride Month, right? So everyone's proud of who they are. So why Muslims should not be proud of being Muslim? Why should we not be proud of believing in Allah, believing in the true religion, believing in the Prophet ﷺ, right? There's a question here. So yeah, let me explain the relationship between the Prophet ﷺ and Hamza Radhan. So you guys remember where was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sent when he was a young child?
Like at the outskirts of Makkah. Like
Yeah. So they were sent in the outskirts to be raised by other people other than their family. So over there they learned the proper language, they learned manners and character. So and as babies they would be nursed, meaning they would drink the milk of one of those women who would take care of them. Okay. So the woman uh, who fed the Prophet her milk as a baby, she also nursed Hamza radiallahu anhu. So that's how they were considered foster brothers, meaning they had the same foster mother or the same. They also called milk mother. They were kind of raised by the same woman, so that's why they're called foster brothers. And that's what Arhan is saying. This he was also a maternal second cousin of the Prophet. So it's a little confusing. So the Prophet ﷺ had his father. His father's name. What was the Prophet's father's name? Anyone remember quickly? Abdullah. Very good. So the Prophet's father was Abdullah. One of his father's brothers was Hamza. But obviously the gap between Abdullah and Hamza was a big gap. But Abdullah's basically, in Urdu, it kind of makes it easy because we have so many different names for uncles and aunts. So you could say Hamza Radhan was the chacha of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Does that make it a little clear? He was the dad's younger brother. Okay, and at the same time, his mother, um, Hamza was the son of the Prophet's mother's uncle or something like that, or mother's cousin. Yeah, mother's cousin. So the Prophet had a father, right? The Prophet also had a mother. His mother's cousin was the parent of Hamza radiallahu anhu. So he was related to Hamza from two sides, from his mother and his father. It's a little confusing, but that's how you have all these different statements. Yeah. Yeah. Arhan's pretty quick with the searches. It's pretty helpful. Thanks. Okay, so we talked about a few companions. Let's talk about, yeah, since Aryan mentioned about Uthman radiallahu anh. Uthman radiallahu anh, does anyone know how Umar radiallahu anh passed away? Yeah, he was killed. He was martyred, not in battle, but in the masjid. he was leading Fajr prayer, right? He was leading Fajr prayer, and someone came and they stabbed him while he was leading. And some of the companions, they broke their prayer, they grabbed him and they took care of him. But Umar radiallahu anh, he didn't pass away immediately, but after that is when he passed away. So after him, Uthman radiallahu anh became the leader of Muslims, and he was a leader of Muslims for many years. I think it could be like definitely over 10 years. He had to deal with a lot of bad people. So Uthman radiallahu anh, what he did is he used to appoint people as governors, right? So imagine he's a leader of like the whole Muslim country, if you want to call it, like imagine like a country, and there were different states, kind of. So Uthman would appoint, some of his family members as governors, not because they were his family members, but because they were fit to carry that role of governor. But some people who had bad intentions, they started spreading rumors about Uthman radiallahu anh, and they started getting people against him. So that's what Aryan was talking about. Towards the end of the life of Uthman, he was very old. At this time, he was about 80 years old or 86 years old. So an old man, he was in his home, and these people came and surrounded, a large group of people. They came and surrounded Uthman anhu's house, and they prevented him from coming out, and they demanded that he leave the leadership of the believers, and they said that he is a sinner and he should be killed. They were trying to kill Uthman, but Uthman said, I'm not going to fight them. Like, they're Muslims, they were bad Muslims, but they were Muslims, so he said, I'm not going to fight these Muslims. Eventually what happened is some of them, they got into his house while Uthman was sitting and he was reading Quran while they were surrounded. They came in and they stabbed him and they killed him as well. So both Uthman and were killed. Uthman was killed while he was fasting and while he was reading Quran. Some of his blood even went on the Quran, and they saved that. I'm not sure if they still have it in a museum, but yeah, it's very sad what these companions went through. They were killed by people in their own area. Hamza was also killed, but he was killed in battle. Do you guys remember which battle he was killed in? No, not Badr. The one after that.
Uhud? Yeah.
Yeah, Battle of Uhud. Very good. And it was an extremely sad time for the Prophet because again, he was like a brother to him. Yeah. So obviously you have Bilal radiallahu anh, he was a slave, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh freed him. And Bilal radiallahu anh, there's one story where his slave master, I'm sure you guys have heard this, his slave master, he took him outside in the heat, in the hot sand. He laid him down on his back and he put a huge rock. He pushed like a huge boulder on him, and he told him to say words of disbelief, or say words against Islam and against Allah, to reject Islam. So he's lying on the hot sand. His back was like melting because of how hot the sand is, and he was being crushed from the top. But still, he just kept saying one God, one God. So until Abu Bakr radiallahu anh came and he freed him. So that's how much they believed in. So imagine like the difficulty they went through for just saying I'm Muslim, or just believing in one God, one Allah. So we should really be grateful, look up to them, and think they went through so much just to be Muslim, and we are Muslim in this country, so we should take advantage of that and appreciate that and be proud of being Muslims. Ali radiallahu anh, again, very, very brave companion. He was known for his bravery. He was the cousin of the Prophet. He was the son of Abu Talib, and Abu Talib raised the Prophet. Right after the Prophet's parents passed away and grandparents, he went and he lived with Ali radiallahu anh. So they were almost like brothers in that sense too. But the Prophet was much older. He was about like 15, 16 years older than Ali radiallahu anh. And then we have the female companions, right? Like the wives of the Prophet. Khadija radiallahu anha, Aisha radiallahu anha. Khadija radiallahu anha, she was very wealthy as well. And she supported the Prophet from the beginning. She supported the Prophet from the beginning. She comforted him. Aisha radiallahu anha, she was the one that the Prophet loved the most. She, when people would say bad things to the Prophet, she would always defend him. She would try to some people said very mean things to the Prophet, so she would get angry and she would start saying mean things back to them. But the Prophet told her, just calm down. This is not the way to respond to them. But that's how much she loved him. The sons of the Prophet. So the Prophet had 3 or 4 sons, and they all passed away while they were babies. And it's kind of to prevent like them being any more people thinking that there were any prophets after the Prophet. So the Prophet himself went through so much difficulty. Imagine 4 of his sons passed away. And does anyone know how many of his daughters passed away during his lifetime? 3 out of 4. Zainab radiallahu anha also passed away. So only Fatima radiallahu anha lived after the Prophet, and she passed away after 6 months. So imagine the Prophet lost his wife Khadija, he lost his mother, his father, his grandfather, his uncle Hamza Radhan, his close uncle, almost like his brother. He lost Zayd ibn Haritha. Zayd ibn Haritha was adopted son of the Prophet. So he also passed away, and 3 of his daughters passed away, all during his life. So it's extremely sad what he went through, but he was still very positive and very kind and caring to other people. So we talked about some companions. Very good. We're going to talk about some more companions next week. All right, guys. So both wives of Uthman passed away, which were the 2 daughters of the Prophet. So we'll finish up talking about the companions next week, and I just want to give you guys a heads up that after that we're gonna have like a small. I mentioned this last week. It's like a small sort of quiz. I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna do it, but about everything that we covered, right? Because we covered we covered God and other religions, Islamic mentality about hope and fear, success, difficulty, how we think about ourselves and other people, and I think that was it. So just like basically to try to remember everything that you learned in this class. So that's going to be in 2 weeks. Next week we're going to finish talking about the Sahaba, and then March 18th will be our last class, which will be sort of like a test, which we'll try to remember everything that we learned in the class and make sure we remember that and we carry that on afterwards. And then we'll have more in Ramadan about. If you guys want to talk about any specific companions, bring those names to class and we'll talk about them. Maybe some of you want to talk about specific Sahaba. So maybe try to think of some that you think, oh, this companion, he or she, really interesting. I would like to learn more about them. Bring them next class. Okay? All right, guys. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, office.